me.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this edition of Hypnosis Week. As always, it's me, yes, me, the person who was born with the name Alex William Smith, but just to confuse matters, he's better known as Jonathan Royal, the British bad boy of hypnosis from magicalguru.com. Anyway, that's enough about me. I'm excited to have another wonderful guest this week on Hypnosis Week, who in 2013 was presented with a let's get a new set of teeth, was presented with a Hypnosis Achievement Award. In 2016, he was presented with the Hypnotist of the Year Award, things I'll ask him about later. He's a motivational speaker. He's presented at every year's Hypno Thoughts Live, has been running in Las Vegas. He's got a background in magic, which obviously I myself also have, and a lot of people who follow this show have. He's also done stage hypnosis shows. He's also a consulting hypnotherapist. So all the areas we explore with different guests on this show, this gentleman has experience in all of them. So please welcome to the show, and he's going to kill me now if I pronounce this wrong. I probably will, but please welcome Michael C. DeSchalit.
Man, you nailed it the first time, Jonathan. That was amazing. You got the name right.
Did I?
You did.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
Excellent. Hey,
but wait a minute, though. I was told when I got this email that I was going to be on the Oprah show. You're not Oprah. What happened? What's going on here? Well, that's all right. Well, nobody gets a car or a house today then. But hey, man, thanks for having me on your event here. I look forward to spending some time with you today. This is exciting.
For being here. For people who don't know your background, obviously we're recording this. I'm going to mention the date we're recording because these go out over the next weeks and whatnot. But just so that if people find it in years to come, they'll realise we both aged. It may look different by then, but it's the 20th of January 2020 as we record this. And you have done all those things that I mentioned, but there would have been a time, maybe it was when you were a kid, I don't know, when you didn't do those things for a living and you had to start your journey to get to where you are now. So can you tell us about your journey to get to where you are now from where you were before you were doing this stuff?
Well, I'll make it as brief as possible, so I'll just mention all the highlights. So as a kid, I was always interested in magic. I remember watching Marshall Brodeen demonstrate the TV magic kits on Saturday afternoon cartoon commercials. And so I always wanted one of those kits, and I got one. I was 7 years old. I got a magic kit, and it was really kind of fun because that just kind of like sparked my interest in magic. I loved watching David Copperfield on TV, and it would piss me off because they would make like stuff vanish, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I'm like, I always want to learn more about magic. Well, then I think I turned 8 and then forgot about all that stuff and just kind of went on with life. I got into music, played in band. And, after college, I always had a yearning for performing again, but there wasn't a big demand for solo trumpet players. I was a trumpet player. It's pretty good, but, I guess I could put a can out on the street and play, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something and try to make change. But so I got a real job. I was sharing an office with another guy, and he goes, "Hey, can you watch the phones at lunch while I go to the magic store and buy a trick for my Sunday school class?" And I went, "Whoa, there's a magic store here?" I said, "Forget the phones. We don't need the business." That's really kind of what I said. And so I went to the magic store and I bought, for those of you that do magic, you know what a hot rod is, the little 6 different color gemstones on one side, and on the other side, you make them change colors. And I bought the trick for $10, and then it became, I would say, an obsession to learn more magic. Probably even qualifies for an addiction to learn more magic, because I think I spent all my spare time at the magic shop and probably all my spare money and then some at the magic shop. Well, after doing magic for about 10 years or so, I had just purchased a brand new illusion, and I picked it up from air cargo. It was sitting in the back of my truck.
So you're doing it professionally by now?
I was doing it professionally by then, yeah.
Oh, right, okay, cool.
So, and just for the record, my wife actually gave me permission to buy this new illusion. So for those of you magicians, yes, you can hypnotize your wives into allowing you to buy big magic props. I don't know how it worked because I wasn't a hypnotist yet, but I just said things to her, and she said, "Okay, buy the trick." So I spent I think $7 grand on this trick, and it weighed 350 pounds, so I was sitting in the driveway of my house. I called her. I said, come and help me unload this thing, and we can start rehearsing because we got a show in a couple weeks here. So when I was waiting for her to come out, long story short, I went to the mailbox and there was a magic magazine. I think it was the Society of American Magicians MUM publication, and I opened to the centerfold just to see what I was going to try to ask my wife if I can buy next, and it was a big ad that said magicians, and I went, that's me. Are you tired of carrying those heavy props? I looked back at the truck and went, that's me. I just bought the thing and I'm already tired of carrying it. Do you want to see the world and entertain people walking in with nothing but a briefcase? And I went, that's me. So it said, learn all the secrets of stage hypnotism by Orman McGill, Jerry Valley, and a host of other trainers, Tommy B, and a host of other people.
That was the Masters Ultimate Stage Hypnosis Seminar adverts, was it?
Exactly. And so my wife came up by that point and I said, look, honey, I showed her the ad. I said, look, I can become a stage hypnotist and it's only, $1500. And she heard it loud and clear, even though I kind of, and she said, well, that wouldn't be the first, $1,500 you spent on something silly. So I took that as a very supportive yes. So I went to the training and I became a stage hypnotist, and with very heavy props. And so actually, sort of the rest is history. That's really the sort of the nuts and bolts of it. I started doing stage hypnosis shows, and I still do some magic to this day. I love doing comedy magic. I sold all my illusions actually about just under 2 years ago when I moved to Las Vegas because I downsized and they wouldn't fit in my garage. And quite honestly, I'm 54 now. I know I don't look it, but I don't want to carry all that heavy stuff around anymore. So I do comedy magic, but I also spend most of my time doing stage hypnosis shows. And I think that's how your path and my path crossed somewhere along the lines. I don't know.
Where during that journey did you get your hypnotherapy?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I completed the the master stage hypnosis training with Orman and Jerry and Tommy and a host of other trainers. And I went out and did my first show 2 weeks after that. And get this, you're going to love this, Jonathan. I got booked by an agent who'd booked me for magic. He booked me to do a college sorority hypnosis show. Ooh. So 100 beautiful sorority girls. Right. There is a hypnosis god, and he was smiling down upon it. So yeah. So anyway, so I went and did that show, and it worked out really well. I have a funny story about actually how it almost didn't work out really well, if you want to hear that one later. But anyways, it worked out pretty well in the end. And after the show, 2 girls came up to me. Now, granted, these were beautiful sorority girls, but I was also old enough to be their dad, so it was a little awkward at that point. But so they said, we saw what you made those people do up there. Can you make us quit smoking? And right then and there, now again, their languaging goes a little bit off. I didn't make anybody do anything, merely just suggested, right? And although I would have liked to make them do a lot of things, but anyways, that's another story, another time. We'll keep this PG-13. So anyways, so I, in all sincerity, I thought to myself, and as I went to answer their question, I said, well, I'm not really qualified to do that, but I remembered what Orman and Jerry always said is, try to refer them to somebody in your area if you don't know how to do what they're asking you to do. So I referred them to another hypnotherapist, and I thought, well, you know what? First of all, I'm missing an opportunity to help somebody, maybe change their life, if not save their life. But I'm also leaving some money on the table. Yeah. So I immediately signed up for a course in hypnotherapy and became certified. So it really wasn't too much longer after that. So I do that as well, too. And now I do it all virtually, kind of like what we're doing now on Skype or Zoom or any of the platforms.
Yeah, I noticed that you've given talks in the past about being the virtual hypnotist.
Yes.
So let's go on to that briefly, and then we'll get back to I've made myself a note. If you see me look down, it's going to make it a note.
Oh, good. Yeah. All right.
To remind you. Yeah, the virtual hypno thing is becoming, the world is your lobster, so to speak. Because you don't need to leave where you are, and you can connect with people anywhere in the world. How, for someone who perhaps, for therapists out there that haven't moved into the technological era that we're now in, how does that work? And by that I mean both from what platform do you use, and also what sort of safety considerations and such like.
Sure. Well, as far as transitioning, because I started off with an actual brick and mortar practice, so I had a lot of practice, dozens of years as a hypnotist already. So the transition wasn't that hard for me, and I'll address these kind of one at a time. But let me talk about the technical aspects first. I use Zoom. I don't use Skype anymore. I used to use Skype. I use Zoom. You can easily record the sessions. There's some cool backdrops you can put in there, and it's just a fun, easy platform to use. All my system is automated. So if somebody goes to my website, they click, for a free consultation, takes them to my scheduler. The scheduler then talks to Zoom and sets up the appointment for me, reminds me that I have Zoom meetings coming up, also sends out a link to them so that they know which link to click when it's time for our consultation or our session.
And then also, for you.
Yeah, they all talk to each other. It's all done for me. It's all entirely automated. And then it also talks to PayPal. So when it comes time for you to move from a consultation to a session, you go back in, you schedule the time that you want to see me for stop smoking or whatever it is you want to see me for. It'll collect your payment for me. It'll actually even direct you to a form site where we can fill out your intake forms. And I don't really, essentially, if you skip the consultation, and you say, hey, I want to quit smoking, you go to my website, you sign up, you fill out the intake forms, I will physically not even see you until our session starts. So it's all automated for me, which is very, very nice and not that expensive to do.
The software for that, or have you took something that was already existing and adapted it?
I actually use something that's already in existence, but all the platforms work so well together that they do talk to each other and they do automatically redirect to each other. So it really just fell in my lap. I want to throw a shout out to Michael Watson. He actually taught me how to use Zoom for sessions. I took that class and then I learned I took it one step further because, as a magician, you get this, we're totally obsessive compulsive in everything that we do. So if I learn something, I like to try to take it up 6 or 7 notches above that, just because that's what we do. And so that's what I did. I took it to the next level and automated the whole thing. Really is not hard to do. I claim to be the virtual hypnotist. There's others out there that do this. I don't want to be that guy that says I'm the only one. But as far as the safety concerns, so I'm glad you brought that up. There really isn't any that I've found. The only real differences between doing a session online like this and doing it in person is I can't shake your hand when you walk in the office. I can't do any physical touch modalities, which I didn't do anyways. I didn't really want to touch my clients. So I didn't really do any of that. So I didn't lose anything with that. Some of the pre-testing that you would do with the client, suggestibility or now it's happening to me too. I've lost my front teeth now. Susceptibility testing, anything like that. You have to just alter that, and I'll do magnetic fingers or something that doesn't require me to be too physical with them or for them to be too physical on a camera. And you can even get away with arms rising and falling too. You can get away with that test as well, as long as they back up a little bit and you can see them and they can see you. Really not much different. And here's the reality, Jonathan. I totally appreciate the big buildup you gave me about virtual hypnosis. The bottom line is when I relocated from Arizona to Nevada to Las Vegas about just under 2 years ago, I was too cheap to get an office here. That's it. That's why I decided to go virtual.
Right.
Yeah. Now I actually do have an office now, however. And I think you're going to be speaking with one of my colleagues, Dr. Richard Nongard.
I interviewed Richard the other day,
Oh, good, okay.
And I'm going to be speaking to him again in a couple of weeks with a view to sorting something out for later in 2020 to come back to Vegas. I've not been in Vegas since end of 2013, I think it was.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Hopefully we can.
Yeah. So he and I and a couple other guys share an office together now. But let's be clear for all of our viewers at home. I am the better looking one of the two of us. Just thought I'd mention that because nobody else will in this interview. So just want to throw that out to you, my friend. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, in terms of the online virtual stuff, does your intake form do it, or your your website advertising? Tell them about things like, make sure your phone's switched off. Make sure you've got a chair that if you were to become deeply relaxed, that you're not going to fall off. Make sure your dog's locked in the garage. You know, how do you deal with those things?
Absolutely. I go through all those things with them in the consultation, and before we begin hypnosis in that first session. You know, if you have a recliner that has big fluffy arms so you can't fall out of it, or if you do recline, that makes it even safer because then you can't fall out of it. Also, I've had some clients, you know, do the session lying in their own bed or on a couch. And as you know as well as I do, I think no matter how deeply the client goes, they kind of ultimately know if they're falling, or, you know, most of the time they can catch yourself. I've never had it happen. However, I did have, when I was very first starting out, I had an interesting situation, and I was hypnotizing a female truck driver, a trucker, as we would call them in the States. So she was hauling stuff across the country. She had a driving partner, and so we did sessions while she was on the road.
Oh,
and I know, yeah. Now I know, yeah. But here's the funny thing about it. So she would be sitting in the passenger seat in the cab of this big semi truck on satellite connectivity, so all that. And her driving partner would just put his earbuds in, and so he would listen to his music, so he wasn't hearing any of our conversation.
Oh, right, okay, that answers.
Yeah. So, yeah. The earbuds really makes the whole difference, doesn't it? Yeah. Otherwise, you'd be. That number, yeah. So, but the funny part was I told her, because she had asked and we joked about it. I said, well, she says, what happens if we get disconnected? I said, well, you'll probably die then. I don't know. It's never, you could die. You could die. I mean, maybe you'll never wake up. You'll never be able to drive your truck again. And of course, I was just kidding with her. And she goes, yeah, she knew I was kidding. And so one day we're doing a session. We lost connectivity. We always had an out. I would call her back on the phone and we'd reconnect. And, you know, just that happens with when you're using virtual sessions. Technology fails. And so so we always had a caveat. We always had a plan. So I couldn't call her back. She wasn't responding to her phone. And then she wasn't calling me back. And I thought, oh, crap, she died. And so maybe it's true. She died. And so about 2 hours later, she called me back and she goes, I bet you thought I died, huh? And I went, I did, actually. But she goes, well, we just lost all kinds of connection. I couldn't get satellite phone to work. I couldn't get signal. We were in Arkansas someplace in the hills. And so I'm back at my hotel now. We just picked up right where we left off. So it's kind of a funny little story. But, you know, the better you set up your session, the better the results. And just like in sales, and you have done a lot of it, and so have I, when's the best way to handle an objection before it becomes one? And so just handle all those things in your pre-talk so you don't really have safety issues.
Excellent. What would you say? I mean, obviously you've done a lot of this virtually, so you'll be able to gauge against what you did previously. Obviously, you've got the missing element. You can see the people and you can hear them. Mm-hmm. But you know, when you're physically in a room with somebody, I don't want to get winky, wanky, arty, farty, tree hugging, new agey fight, because I don't believe in a lot of that stuff. But I do believe that there's almost an energy. You know, you can walk in a room and you can tell if there's been an argument going on, or you can just feel in the same way you can feel like the intent of the therapist, he believes he's going to be able to help you, type thing. That it's not as easy to transmit, is it, just over a screen?
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to transmit those emotions, those feelings, that intuitive sense. And again, I don't claim to be a psychic or an intuitive, but I think after a while, it goes back to kind of that rapport building process with the client. You build a good set of, you know, skills with them, and you build rapport. You're in rapport and you gain trust with them. You actually do start feeling those same things through the screen. I think there is that you can express empathy and feel empathy and sympathy and all those things. It just takes a little bit more work to do. I would say that would be the hardest part of the job. Doing virtual sessions is you do have to focus and concentrate a lot more to feel those same emotions and feelings and that same connectivity. But it's not impossible. I think it's all how you set up rapport with them, and you build a strong rapport with your clients, and guess what? It'll happen. It'll just happen naturally.
How do you handle, God forbid it happens, but how do you handle how have you handled, or how would you handle, depending on which is the relevant,
Sure.
an emergency occurring? Because obviously, if you had somebody in your office and they suddenly had a, say, epileptic fit,
Sure.
you no doubt know from first aid training if they fell off the chair to approach them from the rear, put your hand under the head, tilt them, keep your fingers away from the mouth, but make sure they don't choke type thing. Obviously, you can't do that if you're not physically in the room with them.
Right, right. And so, and that's a great question because, yeah, and I've not had it happen. I did have a client who suffered from epileptic seizures. And so, again, I think it was sort of just talking about that ahead of time. Most clients know their limitations. And by that, I mean, they kind of know their own physical well-being. And, or an abreaction even could happen too. And sometimes if you're doing like regression work, you actually inspire abreactions. I don't do a lot of regression work, and the clients that I've decided to specialize and see, usually I don't get any really negative emotions coming out of it, other than maybe a little bit of anger and a little bit of sadness, but nothing that's going to inspire anything that's a huge abreaction or even hysterical reaction at that point. Because I'm working with peak performers now and usually just getting them unstuck and moving on to higher levels, or self-confidence issues, getting them unstuck and moving on to higher levels. But yeah, if in my intake with the client, I usually ask them, is there anything that I need to be aware about that I can't handle because I'm not in the same room with you? And they usually say, well, yeah, I pass out all the time, or that's like, okay, we need to have a conversation about that then. Is there somebody else around that's in the same, maybe not in the same room, but in the house with you, that maybe you could just leave your door cracked? And if they don't hear you talking for a while or me talking for a while, then to come in and check on you. It's not going to bother me. And it's certainly not going to bother you. Again, just like when you're doing a stage show, any sounds you hear in the audience are not going to bother you. Help you to go deeper, So even if your husband came in to check on you, just know that it's your husband coming in to check on you. So that'll help you to go deeper in hypnosis. And again, you always build in, some caveats, if they are having an abreaction, you have a safe place for them to go, and, all the therapeutic things that you would do as a normal safeguard.
Yeah, excellent. I had a really good question then. We'll come back on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Wide awake.
Whenever I'm teaching anyone hypnotherapy, I tell them that in this day and age, I recommend that everybody in their office, when they're physically being visited, have effectively a webcam that's recording, so they can store it on an external hard drive. So you can get hundreds of hours of client sessions on an external hard drive that, to stick with GDPR regulations, data protection, gets locked in a safe place. But to protect you as the therapist, that's why I give that advice, so that male or female therapists cannot be accused of doing something they haven't done. Now, obviously, Absolutely. With virtual sessions, I know you couldn't physically abuse anyone. Sure. So them trying to accuse you of that would be kind of pretty pointless. But do you record sessions, because the online sessions, because you could be accused maybe of having done something inappropriate, even though you're not able to physically touch them?
Yep. Great question again on that one too. Yeah, because that has always been a concern. When I had a physical office, I had for nothing more than just recording a physical contact, I had a security camera behind me, and the recording was pressed, and I saved it on a disc, and that went in a locked file cabinet. Every session I ever saw, every client I ever saw. With doing the Zoom or the Skype sessions, there's ways to record the session, and I do record every session for that very reason. Just because you don't want to be accused of doing anything inappropriate, or even saying anything inappropriate, or even sometimes, on a rare occasion, a client would come back to you and say, I'm not really sure what happened? I felt like I was moving around on that session, or I felt anxious. And we could review the recording then and say, yeah, it was right here that you started to have a little bit of a tremble. And we were talking about that one time where something happened to you. And so we can review that too. Very rarely do they ask to see the recording, because I usually tell them it's the most boring recording you'll ever see. You're sitting there with your eyes closed and you hear me talking. It's like really not a popcorn kind of eating movie. So if you did want to see it, though, I can have it and make it accessible to you. But that's a great point, though. Yeah, because we do live in a litigious society. And when I set up my Zoom sessions, it automatically starts recording the second we log on.
Excellent.
So it's from the time we start to the time I hit end session.
And if anyone was to claim that they ended up feeling, I don't know, they went to a therapist to sort the folder, and then they suddenly, for whatever reason, felt depressed and decided they wanted to blame the therapist and take a lawsuit. You've got the recording there, haven't you? I mean, you've got the perfect, this is what I did, and it ties in with all accepted conventional ethics protocols and stuff, and it cover you.
Sure. Yeah, and as far as saving those recordings too, because you did ask about this, you have two options in Zoom. You can save them to the cloud, which I'm pretty sure is secure where they save them to. However, I prefer to save them to my hard drive. I dump them on an external hard drive, and then I know it's secure. Yeah. And so that way it's not to the cloud. I don't necessarily want anything there. It's easier for me just to save it. It saves it in an MP4 file, so I can dump it right onto an external hard drive and save it that way, throw it in a safe, and that way nobody can get to it.
Excellent. I mean, that's if anyone who hasn't done sessions online in the past, I always say, watch these when we finish, get a pen and paper and watch again and take notes, because there's lots and lots of information just been in that bit. So let's go off on one entirely now and jump across to look back on briefly your stage hypnosis hat.
Sure.
I've got a note here that I've got to ask you about how it nearly didn't work. The Sobriety Girl show, the first one that you did, turned out well, but it nearly didn't.
Yes. Okay. So my very first show, 2 weeks after I'd finished the stage training, and again, having been a magician, I felt comfortable on stage. And as a magician, the likelihood of having prop malfunction is great, especially if you're dealing with livestock or animals or birds. Look, I produce a bird. Look at it fly away now. Oh, well, it wasn't supposed to happen. But and you play it off as, look, it's free now. It happened. So you can have those things happen in a stage hypnosis show quite easily, because you're dealing with 12 or 15 or however many volunteers you have. You're dealing with other people, and you cannot control them sometimes. So here's what I did. I did a perfect pre-talk. If I say so myself, it was a perfect pre-talk. And I did just a great induction, sort of a little hybrid Jerry Valley Orman McGill induction. It was perfect. And I get to the point where all the volunteers I'm counting down, and I'm very theatrical now because I was a magician. And so I got all the way down to 0 and I said, sleep. And I did the hand thing like David Copperfield. One finger's a little lower than the others, and it looks mysterious. And sleep. And all their heads went, ooh. And they even fell deeper into hypnosis. And then a girl in the audience hiccuped. Oh. And then 2 girls around her giggled. And then all other 90 girls in the audience started giggling. And then every one of my 12 volunteers did this. They got up out of their chairs, and they went back to the audience and sat in their seats. Now, at this point in time, I had what you would consider a mild case of hysteria internally. Yeah. I crapped my pants. And so, because I realized what I'd done in my perfect pre-talk and instructions and all that. So I didn't mention that, hey, any sounds you hear won't bother you. Just focus on me and that. And I also did not mention that if you feel like you're coming out of hypnosis, let me properly excuse you. Don't just go back to your seat in the audience. Those 2 little minor things that I forgot to mention. So now my agent that booked me for the show was standing off to the side. He was actually running sound for me. And he looks at me and I look at him, and he could probably see the look of fear in my face, although I was trying to disguise it. And he's like looking at me like, okay, what are you going to do now, Einstein? And so I looked at the audience, and I don't know where this came from, Jonathan. I have no idea if it was divine intervention or if I have just really good verbal Tourette's. And but I said, well, ladies, what you just saw was an example of how easy it is to go into hypnosis. So now we're going to fill these chairs one more time, and we're going to do the show for real. And so I have no idea where that came from. I'm not that good. Honest to God, I'm not that good. I think it was fear, and everything just kind of came out all at once. And so I said, so who would like to volunteer to be in the show? And 11 of the 12 hands went up from the girls that were up there. And then one girl, so by now I'm feeling pretty good because I'm going to save this thing, right? So one of the girls said, can we volunteer to be in the show again? I said, well, normally I wouldn't allow you to do that, but I'm going to make an exception this time. Now, why wouldn't I allow that? They're pre-hypnotized. I mean, all I had to do was say sleep. Yeah, but I wanted to make it theatrical at this point. I was getting a little cocky. And so I had 11 of the 12 girls come back up. I had a newbie come up. I did a little bit faster of an induction. Still did a little bit of an induction for the other girl who hadn't been induced the first time. And after the show, and pulled off a great show after that. After the show was great after that. Excellent. But it almost fell apart really bad. And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, I brought my dad to the show with me too. He was going to run the video camera. Unfortunately, he forgot to press record. So he was caught up in the moment, I guess. And so we have no video of the show. It's locked up here in my mind forever as a bad nightmare. And the agent after the show came up to me and he goes, man, that was a great show. He goes, he didn't know it was my first show either. And so he goes, that was a great show. He goes, I've seen a lot of hypnotist shows, and I've never seen them do like a practice run through like that. And so I looked at him and I said, I do all my shows that way. And I turned around and I walked away. And then I cried when I got to my car.
Well, there's a very important lesson within that. And that, you as the hypnotist, whether it's stage or therapy, might know you've tripped up on your words, done something wrong, but the audience members or the volunteers on stage or the client in the consulting room doesn't know unless you tell them.
Right, exactly.
And excellent. They just assume as long as you like that, completely normal. This is what happens.
Don't panic. They don't know what you're supposed to say or do anyways. So it's just if you panic, that's where you get into trouble. And also too, I think just having proper training and being prepared, rehearse before you go into a situation. I remember rehearsing even to see clinical clients too, because there is a flow to this. And the more you do it, it gets easier. But if you don't know how to do it, you've never done it, practice with somebody. Practice with a trusted friend or a colleague, or talk to other colleagues, figure out a roadmap here. What are you going to do? And if you rehearse that, and I remember practicing hypnotizing my pillows on my couch, and just to get the pattern down, if nothing more, and learn where to stand and learn where to walk and all those things. And it'll pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, you'll naturally sound more confident, and they'll pick up on that intent in your voice. Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm going to throw this one at you. And I asked Richard Nongard the same thing, and I've asked Jim Zellis the same question. All stage hypnotists get the same question. To be honest, therapists are getting the same question, but just in the context of hypnotherapy. So, stage hypnosis-wise, personally, it's my genuine, sincere belief. It didn't used to be years ago, but after 30 years of doing stage shows, it's my belief there's no such thing as people being hypnotized on stage. There are a bunch of attention-seeking fuckwits, as I call it, who some of them may delude themselves and end up believing they've been hypnotized, but in truth, it's just that we give them a perfect excuse to be able to make a fool of themselves and not get the blame, because they can say, the hypnotist made me do it, or I couldn't stop myself. I believe it is just social compliance in the environment. It is, if you like, is a trick, just like magic, except the big secret is, from my viewpoint, and then we'll see what your take on this is if you've got an audience of, say, 1,000 people and 20 people on stage, I would argue that as close as, if hypnosis does exist, it's about belief change. In which case, I believe the 20 people on stage deep down know they've got the perfect excuse to make a fool of themselves. But the 1,000 people in the audience, all right, you'll have the odd skeptic, but the vast majority of them end up seeing what they believe hypnosis to look like occurring. So they believe you've hypnotized people. So I think what we actually do, if we do hypnotize anyone, it's the audience into believing that something special's gone up on stage, when really people are just got the perfect excuse to do what they want.
Wow, that's an interesting concept. That's an interesting theory. I like that. And you know, God, there's so many different directions to go with this. I'll try to put it together to make sense. Having recently just volunteered to be in a show myself, I will tell you, I've been doing stage for, I don't know, 17, 18 years now, something like that. But I'm not a good stage subject because I'm a little bit of a control freak. I like to watch the show. However, I think it's a duty of every stage hypnotist to volunteer to be in a few shows so they can feel it from the volunteer's point of view. At least once in their life, if not dozens of times. And so I was watching a stage hypnosis show here in Las Vegas, and volunteers were slowly trickling up to the stage. And I can see that the hypnotist, might have had a light panel. So I decided, I'm going to volunteer. And I was with a couple other hypnotists, and they volunteered. And I would say that up until about the last year, I would never make it as a volunteer through an entire show. I'd make it through the induction. I go into hypnosis. I love hypnosis. I go deep into hypnosis. I can respond to maybe the first or second routine, and then I usually pop out. Well, this show, I made it through the whole show.
Okay.
And I made it through very deep, actually. I actually became one of those volunteers that slides out of their chair and ends up on the floor with his head on the chair. Mm-hmm. I became that guy. And it wasn't, it wasn't though I was so deep I lost all physical control. And I really knew I was actually having the same discussion we're having now in my head. Is this just a license for me to really let go? Or am I deeply hypnotized? Gee, I wonder what the audience thinks. If they knew I was a hypnotist, how would they think of me now responding like I am in this show? So I was having somewhat of a conscious, subconscious conversation with myself on the same topic. So and again, I think that's an interesting theory that, are we hypnotizing the audience to believe in what they're seeing? Are we hypnotizing the volunteers? And are they really going into hypnosis? Or are we just giving them a license to, like you said, let go? I like what Richard Nongard says about hypnosis in general, that, can anybody get stuck in hypnosis? We had a debate about this, and he goes, well, yes, because we're all in hypnosis all the time. Mm. Okay. I can't argue that. Can somebody get really stuck in hypnosis, like at a high school show afterwards when they really just want to get attention? I doubt that. Okay. They know what they're doing. So there's that. That's wow. This is like a 12-hour webinar we're going to have to do to solve this one. This is like a whole convention.
Let's face it, there is no right or wrong, and the truth of the matter
exactly. That's an interesting thought. I just, you know what? You're right. Mob mentality, compliance comes into play. I think as stage hypnotists, ethically, or at least morally, we have a moral code to try to weed out anybody who's faking, because we want our art form to be as true to the art form as possible. But I'm certain that there are times that people are up there that maybe they're not intentionally faking, but they're not as deep in hypnosis as maybe they look. And so maybe it's just compliance. Maybe they feel the person next to them playing an electric violin, and so they join in too. That's
into the mix. For anyone who doesn't know, there's a guy, the amazing Kreskin. If you search Google, you'll see. Sure. He's been around forever and a day. He's like 90, isn't he, or something nearly? And he did a mind reading mentalist type act. But also, he did what anyone as an observer would call stage hypnosis, hypnotizing
Sure.
people, telling them to do things.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you type Kreskin, the power of suggestion, into YouTube, I'm pretty certain there's still a TV show on there where he's doing all the stuff, sticking them to the floor. They can't get out the chairs. They can't say the next stuff, the stock in trade stuff of a stage hypnotist. And then he categorically tells them all that none of them have been hypnotized. Hypnosis does not exist. There's no such thing as a so-called hypnotic trance state. And he offers, I think it was $10,000, but at one time I think it went up a lot more than that, to anyone who could prove otherwise. And he has taken on the certain states in America, there certainly were, where stage hypnosis wasn't allowed.
Right.
And he's gone there and done his shows blatantly saying, I'm going to do a demonstration of what you call hypnosis, but try and stop me because I'll prove in court it doesn't exist. And he has had legal cases and he's won every time.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that says there's legal precedent that hypnosis is bullshit.
Yeah, it's it's definitely this is a whole convention right here. We should get a bunch of hypnotists together, have a convention, and this be the only topic that we debate.
Yeah. It still entertains people over here.
Sure,
and it still helps them make changes in their life. Definitely. And if people get entertained, how does it matter how it happens? And if people change their life for the better, how does it matter how or why it really happened? But the weight of evidence is, stage hypnosis wise, it's bullshit. Hypnosis doesn't exist. Otherwise, Kreskin wouldn't have won his court cases, would he?
Right. I wonder. Now, let's play with this a little further. What if it was a genetic disposition? So you have a certain color hair. I have a certain color hair. That's genetic. Okay. So what if it was a what if one of the genetic dispositions is that in the course of your life, Jonathan, when it comes to hypnosis, you go to this level of depth, or you are in this level of depth through your whole life. And then I, on the other hand, might go deeper or shallower in that level of depth, that I either enter into hypnosis, a trance state, or that I am, from the time I first take my first breath, am in a trance state and remain in that trance state my whole entire life. But I can only go this far. Just like I can only jump so high because I wasn't on the basketball team. I was in the marching band, and I'm not very athletic. Or just like I was genetically disposed to have brown eyes and not blue ones. So I wonder if it's maybe even before we're thinking about now, what if we thought back all the way to the very beginning? We are all, each of us individually, genetically disposed to be at a certain trance depth our entire life, from the first breath to the final breath. Was that way too deep?
No, I think there's a lot of truth in that. No, I definitely think there is a lot of truth in that, because, if we take away the word hypnosis and maybe just substitute suggestion and belief, suggestion and belief, instead of the word hypnosis, that can be, we know what suggestion is, and beliefs of something people believe. So if we take those two things, everybody, everything they do in life, whether it's working, they have certain beliefs connected to. The social life, they have certain beliefs connected to. We manipulate, definitely stage hypnotists, hypnotherapists clearly work with beliefs, and we can manipulate people to believe that they've been in some special state. But when you look at it, there's nothing that we as stage hypnotists do, or therapists for that matter, that can't happen naturally in society, or people can't do of their own accord.
Sure.
But that's not to devalue what we do, because people obviously like to be entertained and change their life. But it therapeutically, let's flick over to that a minute, because my concept on therapy is that, again, I think that deep down, they may not consciously be aware, but deep down, they have decided that they could change. But they've probably run the scenario through the back of their mind when they've been asleep, maybe, or simulating things. And they probably run the scenario of, let's say they were a smoker, bumping into someone who knew them, and that person suddenly going, Dave, we've been in this bar now, for like an hour, and you've not gone outside for a cigarette. What's going on? And Dave goes, well, that's because I've stopped smoking. And the mate goes, well, when did you do that? Oh, about 2 months ago now, just after I last saw you. So the mate goes, well, was it difficult? And Dave goes, no, it was dead easy. I just decided to stop. And the mate goes, well, in which case, Dave, why were you wasting money for so many years, damaging your health? Why didn't you stop sooner if it was that bloody easy? Or it might be family and friends that say that to them, to a point where they end up, maybe it happens at an unconscious level, relapsing and starting to smoke again, because then they can say, look, it wasn't that easy. Whereas if they go and see somebody like your good self or another therapist, they can leave the office and say, oh, yeah, Dave, I have stopped. And when they say, well, why didn't you do it soon? They say, well, I tried, but it didn't work. But then I went to see this great guy, Michael, and he hypnotized me, and I left his office, and now I don't have any cravings. And it removes all that self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret from them for not having got off their ass and made those changes themselves sooner.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting too, because now you can apply that back to stage hypnosis and even kind of question, somebody who wants to volunteer to be in the show so bad, are they going to be more compliant or hypnotized than somebody who just goes up because his friends are going, go up there, we want to see you hump a chair or something. So, that's interesting, because with my clients, and I think, depending on how you approach therapy or hypnotherapy, my clients, I try to get them to the want state, where they want to do this. Mm-hmm. Now, most of my clients that don't want to do this, 99.9999% of them, if they don't really want to do it, I'll definitely weed them all out during the consultation, because, I'm coming here just to prove to my wife that this is stupid and it won't work.
Yeah.
And those are the obvious ones that you just don't see as clients. Because I don't, I'm fundamentally lazy. I don't need that kind of challenge. I can find an easier client to work with that wants to change, and it'll be more fulfilling for both of us. But I think, though, that, getting them to that want state where they want to make the change, and most of them, like you said, are already there. And like the example you gave, he didn't want to up until 2 months ago. That's what the change was. Is he finally decided it was his choice, he wanted to, not society's or his wife's or his friends or his family. And I think that, again, is kind of goes, if somebody says, well, Jonathan, you should stop doing this. And then you say, well, I don't want to stop doing this. I like doing this, whatever this is. But then one day you change your mind, you don't want to do that anymore. Well, I think morally, or our own set of standards, when somebody says you should do this and you don't want to stop doing that, and you put up a defense, you fight. It's like the fight, flight, freeze. I think you fight and you resist. And then when one day you wake up and you go, I do want to make this change. I do want to be a different person. You no longer fight. You no longer flee. You just allow yourself to freeze and make the change. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. These are like deep thought questions, Jonathan. I must admit, I think I'm going to quit hypnosis now, because you've made me question my very existence in all of this now. Does it real? Am I been a charlatan all these years? I'm going to go do magic now.
That's all that matters. You've
and you know what? That's really truly that statement right there. I got to interrupt you. That statement is so true. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you use this technique or that technique. Are you using techniques that are client centered? Does the client or volunteer, whichever the case may be, do they facilitate the change that they want? Has that happened? Yeah, it doesn't matter if you use this induction or that induction. Heck, I think if you're a good enough hypnotist, well, no, let me take that back. I think if the client really wants to, you can take a dead chicken and go shaka laka laka shaka laka laka shaka laka laka and wave it over their head, and all of a sudden they're a non-smoker. Yeah. Expectation, I guess, is what it boils down to, really. So, yeah. Yeah, I am going to quit the industry now, though, because you've made me question my own existence. Now, thank you so much. It's been a great run. Ooh, I like DeSchalit out. I think I'm going to take up something else now. I'm going to take up something else that maybe somebody like you doesn't question so much and make me think about what I'm doing.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's okay. Why'd you get out of the Mike? Why'd you get out of the industry? Jonathan Rowe made me. That's why.
Please no, please no.
No, I would say that. I would say that.
You mentioned before that you weed out the clients who are not truly ready for change, are not in it sincere. Now, I'm a great believer. You see these people in the therapy world, and they're addicted to going on course after course to learn this new, faster, works more often technique. And I always think, if you're wanting to increase your success rate, just work with better clients. Yeah. Filter out the ones that it's not going to work on, whatever technique you're currently using, because it's not the technique. Sure. It's quite often, it's like you just said, filtering out people who are not truly ready. I think too many people are certainly in England, I see it a lot, therapists who, they're struggling to pay the bills. They might be a really good therapist, and a lot of them are, but sadly they don't know, or they know very little about marketing, advertising, publicity, promotion. So they're in a desperation state where I don't think they're filtering the clients through properly because they need the money. Obviously marketing is key. What would you say about marketing in this day and age? Because obviously as a virtual hypnotist, the world's your oyster, practically. Yeah. And that brings in the whole new arena of online marketing.
Well, and you know what? As far as marketing goes, I am no marketing guru. That is for sure. I've proved that over the years by money spent on foolish methods of trying to get more business and more clients. And what I found, though, and again, I don't want to sound snooty when I say this or all-inclusive, I do still spend money on marketing. I do post things, I do run ads, I do all those things as well. I think it's important to try to cover all your bases. But the majority of my clients, especially in hypnotherapy, are from referrals. And again, it goes back to what you said. It doesn't matter about the method, it matters about the results. Yes. And if you get the results, then people are going to tell other people about you. And I think that's, obviously the highest compliment is a referral. And it may be right away. They may go, well, you helped me quit smoking, and I got my neighbor. He's ready to do it too. He was just waiting to see if it worked on me, so I'm going to send him to you. Or 10 years down the road, they have somebody that they work with or run into, and they go, I used this hypnotist 10 years ago, and if he's still in business, you should find him because he cares and he wants you to be successful. So I think, word of mouth, referrals, asking for the referrals is really my number one source of business, and that even in corporate stage shows too. Yeah. If I do a good job, then they're going to tell other people about me and other schools about me or colleges about me. I think, but you can't just rely on that though too. You do have to do all the other stuff. You got to send out postcards. You got to send out emails. You got to spend money on Facebook ad campaigns. You've got to have a great website. You got to do all those things. I think it really just is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It adds up to a lot of this and a lot of that.
Repetition, persistence,
repetition. That's I think it true. Frequency. I forgot who said this, and I wish I could remember, so I'd give them proper credit. And maybe it wasn't even them that originated this, but I think it was one of the professional athletes. He said something like, "I prefer not to have a plan B. I just don't ever give up on plan A." Something to that effect. And that's that persistence thing that you alluded to, is if you keep doing it, people eventually will probably just pay you just to shut you up, if nothing more. I mean, they'll pay you just because they've seen you enough. Yeah. And they've seen that you're consistent and you're doing this. And that has a lot to do with it too. And that just unfortunately takes time. It takes time to build up that reputation of consistency.
Well, that segues very nicely, because you made mention of being an athlete who mentioned that. So it segues beautifully into the fact that you mentioned earlier that you do mostly now kind of peak performance stuff with
Sure.
Peak. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is you do peak performance wise? Because there's a lot of therapists, their main stock in trade is going to be smokers, weight, phobias, anxiety, that kind of thing. And they might think, wouldn't it be great if I could break into helping sports people or business people? What's it kind of entail?
A couple things, a couple quick things that I try to assess right off the bat is, first of all, I know that everybody at any point in their time and in their life has a deficiency somewhere. Okay, so one day, or for most of your life, you might have been afraid to speak to large groups of people, and then all of a sudden, your boss says, "Hey, you're in charge of this year's presentation at the corporate, sales meeting, so you got to do it, otherwise, we're lose your job." You get up there and you do it. You find out you like it. You no longer have that deficiency. Or maybe one day, after years of speaking to a large group of people, all of a sudden you get shy and embarrassed and you can't do it anymore. You get a fear of it or something. And so I think at any given point in time in our life, we all are deficient in some area. In other words, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
So I try to figure out what the deficiency is that they're having at that moment in time that they're stuck. And again, most of the clients I see are just stuck. I'm never going to coach a basketball player on how to shoot better basketball free throws. Again, and most of the time, I don't even know what the terms are. God forbid I ever get anybody who plays cricket. I won't know what the hell to say.
You say you're never going to coach them on how to do better basketball throws in that example.
Yeah.
Do you not, because do you not like mentally have them rehearse it? The visualization, doing it again and again and again, because there's evidence the mind doesn't know the difference between rehearsed or real. So if they see themselves.
Sure, yeah. But I'm never going to say, move your hand this way on the ball, because I don't know that works out better for them. I'll give you a perfect example. Where I went to college, University of Arizona, there was a basketball player there that last 5, 6, 7 years maybe. Every time he went up to the free throw line, he would do the bounce, 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 bounce. They all do a certain number of bounces, and they're just going through their ritual. They're getting in the zone, as they call it. And this guy would shimmy his ass a little bit. He'd do a little booty shake. And everybody knew him for the booty shake before his free throw. His free throw percentages were in the upper 80s. Okay, he was 80% of free throws. And the coach, people would make fun of it, or, in a fun way, they'd make fun of it. They'd joke about it, the shimmy. And the coach said, "You know what? Is there a way you can maybe shoot free throws without doing the ass shaking thing? Because it's kind of stupid." And so he was shooting free throws just standing still, and he missed part of his ritual. He still did the bounce, 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 tug on the ear, scratch the nose, bounce, and shoot, but he wasn't doing the ass shaking. Well, guess what? His percentages dropped to about the mid 50s. And the coach says, "Get up there and shake your ass, boy." And it didn't play out exactly like that, but in a sense it did.
Yeah.
And so it's finding their own pattern. And going back to answer your original question so I'll try to figure out where their deficiency is at that moment in time. Everybody knows their solution. I truly believe that. It just sometimes we have to facilitate the right discussion to help them figure out the solution to their own problem. And if we
mean they know the solution, but not necessarily consciously.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so sometimes it's a little bit more subconscious.
What was it he said? Everyone has the answer to the problems within themselves already.
Something like that. Exactly, yeah. And then, of course, making it about them and discovering what their want is. And obviously removing any obvious blocks, because we all, I think at any given point in time, we all have some limiting beliefs, and whether they're triggered by an external event or something recent that just happened, or whether they're just complacency or whatever it is, everybody kind of gets that limiting belief every now and then, that blockage, that they hit that glass ceiling, so to speak. So I just help facilitate that conversation with them, consciously and subconsciously, to help them to figure out how to remove it and how to get past it. Of course, there's other techniques that go on throughout that process, depending on the client. But I use a process that I've created, that I think I've created. I don't know.
Okay.
And it's absolutely the best process out there. It's the only one I would use. Just kidding. And here we go again. Yeah. And it's, I call it the genie process. And really, it's nothing more than a silly game I play with them. I'm the genie. You just rub the lamp. Poof, here we are. You get 3 wishes. What are those wishes? And in discovering that, why are you here? What are your wishes while you're here? It's not for the winning lottery numbers. I know that. It's for, what are you here for? And then getting them to finally admit through a little bit of prodding, a little bit of coaching, a little bit of pushing, is that they want these things. That's why. Because a wish is much different than a want, isn't it? I wish I could do this. I hope I can do this. Damn it, I want to do this, and you're in my way, so get out of my way. So I want them to fight the genie for it. And then they realize that I'm not the genie. They're the genie. They're getting in their own damn way. Get out of the way. Stop the limiting beliefs. Stop creating your own obstacles. Get out of your own way and just do what you know how to do. Doesn't matter your hand is here or here. You know how to shoot a free throw. Just frickin' shoot the free throw. And stop with the limiting beliefs.
Excellent.
So there's a lot of that goes on, a lot of banter and a lot of talking and a lot of conscious and subconscious communication and facilitation, I guess.
Do you ever, whether it's with adults or younger, kids or teenagers, with clients at all, do you ever use any of your magic knowledge and tricks at all within the therapeutic framework?
I do sometimes, especially with kids or adolescents, and sometimes with adults. And here's what I know about magic. And I started magic, I told you, and then I was working a lot in the schools. And I know schools at one point, the funding wasn't there to hire a magician just to entertain, to do a magic show. But if you could inspire some sort of message and tie it into the curriculum or the school motto, say no to drugs, or don't bully each other, or stay in school, all those different things that they were promoting at the time. If you could make it a motivational message and have some magic to back it up, they could pay you. So I learned a long time ago that, yes, you can use magic to illustrate a point as long as the magic doesn't overshadow the point you're trying to illustrate. And so even just, I'm sure you know the trick where you take a cigarette and you put it in this tube and you put the cap on, you snap your fingers, you open the cap, you pour it out, and nothing comes out. Well, I load those little tiny little micro cigarettes, the little tiny little ones. And so the message is this, it's something simple. And I don't do it for every client, but just ones that are very visual. I'll say now, what used to have a hold on you, which used to be in every waking thought and every visualization you ever saw, was the cigarette. And then when you take it out of your view for just a second, just like you've erased the thought from your mind right now of smoking, and you seal it away in the deepest parts of your mind where you don't have to go back and look at it anymore, before you know it, almost instantly, it will vanish. Or at the very least, shrink down to something so small that will no longer have a hold on you. So it was a visual that went along with really a description or a suggestion, even in the waking state.
If you tap vanishing cigarette into it, vanishing cigarette magic trick, or
you'll find it.
You'll find this, because that's a great idea, a great example of how to use a magic trick with metaphor, and people who know about NLP will notice that there was the links there. So visually, as you put the lid on the tube, that's locking it in your mind and all that kind of stuff. Excellent. So yeah, excellent. Could I do as well? I just wondered if could I still like to do the odd trick now and again? And
I'm sure, I think you have some magic sites too, Jonathan, some magic websites. I'm sure that somewhere on jonathanrellmagic.com, you could probably find that trick for sale. Maybe not. Maybe not.
I don't sell the physical stuff.
Oh, you don't sell tricks anymore? Okay. No, I thought at one time maybe you did. So I was giving you a little selfless promotion there. And so, but if I were you, I'd add that to your website right now. For $2.99, folks, ladies and gentlemen, you could buy this. You can own this very brand new cigarette right here. $2.99 plus $39.95 shipping and handling.
Yeah. Excellent. So we've just gone over the hour, so that means I now have to ask you, because we're running out of time, the question that I finish off and ask everybody each week. Sometimes we get very similar answers, sometimes we get very different ones. That's one of the interesting things about these interviews, because people come from a different experiential background. Mm-hmm. So if somebody was to come and knock on your door tomorrow, they maybe just read a book on stage hypnosis or a book on hypnotherapy, and they said to you, Michael, I feel that I really want to become the best possible hypnotherapist and or stage hypnotist. Answer this as you so desire, because you've got both backgrounds. What would your top 3 tips to set them on the path to success be?
The top 3 tips would be this. Number 1, get training from as many people as you can afford, time-wise and money-wise, because not any one person is everything to the whole profession. Number 2 is this. I would say practice learn all you can and practice all you learn often. And number 3, always make sure that this is your true passion, and follow that passion. Don't have a plan B, just never give up on plan A. I would say those would be my top 3 tips.
Your third one there, it's weird. Not everyone's come out with that, but today, 3 of the 4 interviews I've put in the can today, not only did 3 of the people say the same thing, it's got to make sure it's your passion, but they also said it as their third in order. And I think the fact that that keeps coming up, that is so important, that maybe those, if you find yourself as a therapist watching this thinking you've got more month left at the end of your money than you've got money left at the end of the month, maybe it is because you're not marketing as well as you could do. Or maybe it's because you don't truly, sincerely have complete, total passion for doing it. Perhaps it might be time to re-examine and think about things. Yeah, I would advise you all to get a pad and a pen, either right now or set a time aside, an hour where you can sit down, watch this video interview again with Michael and myself, and this time take notes, because there are lots of nuggets of wisdom and gems of insight and experience contained within the past hour. Michael, please can you tell everyone how they find out more about you? Can Michael hear me? Oh, Michael's frozen. I don't know if Michael is still there or not. So what I'm going to say is that below this video will be a link to Michael's website. Click on that link, visit his website. If you go on Amazon, you will find, if you type in his name,